Welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast, bringing you authentic and vulnerable stories that will inspire you to breathe fire on this world and become your own hero. Here's your host, Blaise Hunter.
Hello, welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast. I'm Blaise Hunter, and I am a fertility expert. No, I don't help people get pregnant. This is a different type of expertise. I actually inspire women to birth confidence and self-worth, to birth their books and business ideas, dreams, passions, and goals, as well as discover peace amongst infertility. After going through my own sets of traumas and tragedies, dealing with a rare disease, and experiencing 3 miscarriages, I decided to take charge of my life and not let life happen to me, but rather become the hero of my own life. I am not barren. I continually birth my purpose every day. So that's why I've created this show, to demonstrate how even though we experience setbacks and disappointments, we still have a destiny to birth. We just need to blaze the trail and be expecting. This podcast will inspire you to lean into your hardships and allow them to be the vehicle that transports you into becoming the hero of your life so you can breathe fire on this world. This week's episode is called To Kegel or Not to Kegel. And some points we'll cover are, we'll be learning about our pelvic floor and anatomy. What are the warning signs of something happening down there and we need to address? Are women supposed to be doing Kegels? Is incontinence normal? And how stress can play a factor in our pelvic floor health. And I have my friend here, Lisa de Villiers, here to speak on this topic. Lisa obtained her physiotherapy degree in South Africa in 2009. She has worked in multiple settings throughout her career. Her most recent work experience and passion lies within the field of pelvic health and persistent pain. She realized that so many people are not getting the appropriate support and care for persistent pain, and she has dedicated her time and energy to address that. Lisa is a registered Pilates instructor, and she also enjoys using this unique skill in rehabilitation to give her clients a different experience of movement in their bodies. Her physiotherapy values include building a strong therapeutic relationship, empowering her clients, establishing self-efficiency, and taking a holistic approach to rehabilitation. She loves educating clients about their bodies, finding new creative ways to increase function, and helping them gain back control. Lisa is a big advocate for health and wellness, and in her downtime, she enjoys working out, staying healthy, and spending time with her cats. Welcome, Lisa, to the show.
Thanks, Blaise. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. You have been a friend of mine, a mentor, and you've really educated me about my own body and just so many things I had no idea. And you made it such a safe place for me to learn and grow and just develop my own awareness of my body. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's a big pleasure. It's so nice. It's so nice to be on the show today, and thank you for those kind words.
Thank you. I just love this topic because I feel this has really been taboo over the course of learning about women and just like understanding that we really don't talk about it. And I find it so interesting that men know all about their anatomy. It's out there, it's visible. But I find women, because a lot of our parts are internal then, right? We don't know much about our own internal anatomy, our pelvic floor, our vagina, our cervix. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, Blaise, I think one of the things, definitely, I think what happens sometimes is because it's an area for a lot of people that cause a bit of discomfort or embarrassment, we tend to sort of disconnect ourselves from that area. So maybe one of the reasons would be to be like, okay, I'm just gonna ignore that and move on with my life, right? So I find that sometimes is the case, and I think also a lot of the times, because like you said, it's an area that's sort of deep within our bodies. You know, it's not an area that we can see necessarily. A lot of women out there have had significant trauma in that area from childbirth or have had issues in that area. So it's almost like you don't know, what to feel, what not to feel, and sort of what to expect, So yeah, I think that could be one of the reasons, or, a couple of reasons why we kind of don't know what's going on there.
Oh, exactly. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show to kind of break that silence barrier and open this line of communication and have this conversation and just, create that safe place where women can talk about our bodies. It's not dirty. It's not, shameful. It's just a way of life. It's our anatomy. Let's start educating ourselves. Like, we don't even know what's happening in there. And I think we should really learn about this. Like, women's health, this is part of it. And it's not about being sexual. It's just really about understanding how our body works and how we can do it to make ourselves more healthy, right?
Yes, exactly. No, and I mean, if you have issues around your digestion, or like if you have stomach issues, then I mean, what people would do is kind of address that area, right? Why do we not, as women, address pelvic-related issues like incontinence, prolapse, pain down there, right? Mm-hmm. You're right. Like, it is definitely an area that is definitely not it is a taboo area, and people don't really talk about it that much. So yes, good that we can talk about it today.
Absolutely.
Society also makes it, on the one hand, makes it a very normal thing to have leakage of urine, with kind of like all the advertisements around, products for incontinence, right? So I think kind of that's an issue that almost you think that it's normal, so you don't have to address it. I think that's also an issue that I find that people sort of sit with and deal with, and so either it could be an embarrassing situation, or it could be like, well, it's normal, everyone has it,
Exactly, and it's not normal, and there's ways to address it and go forward and improve the situation, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why we need to be addressing it is because it really affects sort of basic bodily, like that area of our bodies. I mean, it's basic bodily functions to be able to be continent, right? To be able to be to have bowel control, bladder control. Like, it's a basic human right almost to be able to have intercourse that's not uncomfortable. So, like, I think those are the reasons why it is important to address it. And we know the stats, like 50% of women at some point in their life cycle will actually experience incontinence. So there's actually a big group of people that have issues around this area, and we need to help those people.
Absolutely. And so that leads into my question here. So what made you want to learn more about pelvic floor and that area and the functions we have down there and help women and educate them?
Yeah, so I came to Canada about 5 years ago, and I was working in a clinic where we had a wonderful gynecologist, and she was seeing a lot of these clients with incontinence, prolapse, problems with intercourse, and she wanted to refer them to me. And at that time, I was just doing other types of physiotherapy, and then I decided to, because I was in a very small community, I decided to actually sort of get education and get training to be able to assess and treat conditions of the pelvic floor or of the pelvic area. So that's how I got into doing pelvic health physiotherapy. And when I say pelvic health physiotherapy, it's definitely not just looking at the pelvic floor. When we do our assessment, we definitely look at other factors as well. Like, we look at the function of the bladder, the function of the bowels. We look at, mobility. We look at, we look at the pelvic floor. We look at how that muscle works. So is it able to contract? Is it able to relax? What is the coordination around, how that muscle functions? But, we also look at, the core and certain other areas in the pelvic region that can have an effect on the pelvic floor as well, and vice versa. So it's definitely called pelvic health and not pelvic floor physiotherapy for a reason. We can't always just say, oh, that's my pelvic floor. We almost have to look at all the factors sort of in that area, all the factors that potentially could affect the pelvic floor or could affect the pelvic health, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm gonna ask maybe a dumb question because when I met you, I had no idea even what pelvic floor meant. And that is actually really sad that I'm a grown woman in my late 30s. How come I didn't know even I have a pelvic floor? So maybe can you explain what is the pelvic floor for people that have never even talked about this topic?
Yes. Okay. Definitely, I can do that. I was in the same boat, Blaise, when I also did not know about this pelvic floor. So I think it is very common and sort of actually kind of a normal sort of, thing that can happen. People just don't know that they have that muscle in their bodies. So the pelvic floor is a very important muscle that we have that sits sort of low into the pelvic region, and I'll kind of go through the anatomical points of where you would find this muscle, but basically from the pubic bone in the front to the tailbone at the back, from your one sit bone to your other sit bone. Those are the four little points, between those 4 points, that's where pelvic floor muscle sits, okay? Mm-hmm. And then internally, the pelvic floor wraps up to the sides towards your hip joints and towards your spine at the back, and towards the front, really close and going up towards the pubic bone and connects towards your core, your abdominal wall. So yes, the pelvic floor actually is a big area of muscle. I don't know if you actually knew that, but yeah, so it's definitely not just the vagina, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I think that is, because we can't see it, I think that is a misconception for women because we're not looking at it, we're not investigating it, and we haven't really seen this topic come to light just in this last little while that I'm seeing more and more about pelvic floor, and I maybe just ask you a little bit, why is it so important? Is it more, like you said, for continence, for actually functioning health in our entire bodies, but also pre and postnatal, before giving birth and after, right? It's so important to get that checked out, correct?
Yeah, and so definitely, and I think when we look at where the pelvic floor lies and the close connection between the joints of our pelvic area, so we have hips, we have sort of pelvic joints, we have the spine, so there's connections to those areas. So the pelvic floor actually provides stability and support to those joints. Okay, so that's the one thing the pelvic floor contributes to. Then it also, because your bladder and your bowel and your uterus lie very snugly sort of connected to this pelvic floor, there's also a relationship between the function of your bladder, your bowel, your uterus to the pelvic floor. So because of that close connection there, we have that. Then the pelvic floor also has a sphincter control. So it's able to contract and close the sphincters of the vagina, or around the urethra, and then around the anus and the vagina. So those sphincters, it controls it. It can shut it down by contracting. It can allow it to open up with relaxation. So we have sphincter control. We have sexual function. So the pelvic floor is definitely a role player in intercourse and having an orgasm. And blood flow in the area. And then the last function, I would say, is just keeping, almost like a sump pump, so keeping fluids from accumulating, so preventing that from happening and really allowing circulation in that area. So, if you look at, all of these functions, something can go wrong everywhere around these areas, right? So I think, the pelvic floor definitely has multiple functions, and that's why even with people that have back pain, we need to almost look at what is the pelvic floor doing, because there's a connection between the pelvic floor and the back.
I love that you bring that up, because there may be an imbalance in one part of the body, but it may be presenting in a different way, so you need to find out where the root cause, the source, right? I love that tie-in. So what are some signs then that there is an imbalance with the pelvic floor in that area, like incontinence and pain and different things like that? Yeah, what are some signs?
Yeah, so I always talk about the 4 Ps. So we have P, which is urine loss, leakage of urine. P, poo, pressure or prolapse. We can talk about that if, for some people that don't know what that is. And then we have, so it's pain and pain. That's the last one. So we have pee, poop, pressure, and pain. So those four things, if that is kind of happening right now in your body, it could be related to the pelvic floor, but it could also be related to other things in that area, like your bladder, your bowel, your even like, tightness in a certain sort of joint or in your back can actually also affect function of the pelvic area. So like, because everything is so connected and close together in that area.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, like I didn't even know all of that yet because it's just so much to learn. And I find it so interesting and want to learn more because I do want to have a healthy internal and outer system, and everything plays a factor, and we have to start educating ourselves about this, right?
Yes, for sure, definitely. And I think the first thing, Blaise, is to realize that potentially this is happening in your body and to sort of listen and maybe potentially take action or seek answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then to realize that these symptoms are not normal.
Yes.
They are very common, but they are not actually normal.
It's not something you have to just live with. Oh, I guess like that's my stage in life where I'm going to have painful sex, or I have some incontinence, let's wear a pad, right?
For sure, definitely. It's definitely, and I think this is where you might ignore that in your body because it's normal, but it's not.
Yes. And you mentioned a little bit about prolapse. So maybe like explain what that is.
Yes, so prolapse is a shift in the position of some of the organs, or one organ or multiple organs in the pelvic area. Now, I do not want to sort of scare the listeners off and kind of really catastrophize around this because, we go through life. We have to, participate in impact activities, and sometimes some of us have jobs that really require us to sort of do heavy lifting and heavy load, sort of carrying for extended periods of time. So like, we go through life, we have to be on our feet, but sometimes what can happen is could be because of weakness of the pelvic floor, or could be because of ligament sort of laxity around those organs, that some of those organs might shift a little bit. So that means it will kind of go down into the path of least resistance, which most often is the vagina. So you'll find that women will present with, they'll feel pressure down there, especially being on their feet for a while maybe. Some people have actually, some people explain it as a tampon that's sort of in a weird position. It feels like it's in a weird position, but there isn't actually a tampon in their vaginas. So yes, those are the symptoms that people actually have when they maybe potentially could have a prolapse.
That's so interesting. And like you had said before, there's connections. It may be presenting in one way, but we're not sure if that's the source, right?
Yes, and I want to elaborate a little bit more on the prolapse and why people can develop this. Sometimes, most of the time, it would be related to pregnancy or delivery, the birthing process, right? So when you're pregnant, you have a little bit more weight in your body, and that weight increases the pressure down into your pelvic area, and that pressure might just be a little bit too much for your strength of the pelvic floor or for your body. So that can happen in pregnancy. I find that in the birthing process, because we have to push our babies out, that excessive amount of pressure to push our babies out can also potentially lead to a prolapse. But just to do a little side note here, it doesn't necessarily happen to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you do have a prolapse, you might not have the symptoms of it.
Right.
Where some people have no prolapse, but they have symptoms. So it's really unique to each individual. It's really about your own body and how you respond to different factors in your life, right? So I just want to mention that as well.
Absolutely. And I love that you correlate all of that, and everything is linked. And it's really about really being in tune with our bodies. And I find many women, we get busy, we push through a lot of pain, we push through things, and we think that's normal and we just deal with it. But it's learning how to really reflect on how our body feels and maybe ask the question, is this normal, or is this just something I've learned to live with? Or is there a correlation happening in my body where maybe something else, my back, is really from my pelvic floor, right? And I've done a lot of alternative therapy and with my own issues. And one observation I came across was that I was doing a lot of work. It's called body talk, and just listening to your body, and it's always telling you, and you got to tune in. And the practitioner actually made a great observation, was that a lot of times if you have sinus issues or anything going on in the head region, the mouth or the sinuses, we actually have a lot of reciprocals that are mirrored, like a partner of a body part. So like our sinuses are actually linked to our pelvic floor and our reproductive system. So if there's something going on with the sinuses, that's your cue to maybe check in and get something checked out with your pelvic floor, your reproductive system. Maybe there's an imbalance there as well. Maybe not, but it's a good indicator to check that. And if you're having issues with your mouth, that's actually your vagina. And so like, it's interesting that our body is so connected. It's not just one thing. We got to look at the whole body, right? Yes. And I think that's what you really preach as well, is that you got to look at the whole thing, the whole picture, and see what else is happening, not just identifying one thing, right?
Yeah, and I think this is where I might start talking about the nervous system. Right. I don't know if if we want to maybe explain to the listeners what the nervous system is, but like, other than looking at, the pelvic area, I tend to also look at the nervous system, because the nervous system could be a driver for issues in any part in the body. Right. I mean, we know how closely linked, for instance, thoughts and feelings are to what we feel in our bodies.
Yes. Exactly.
So
and
I think
you really do well with connecting all of that. You do a really great job. Like, you're well informed in all aspects of the human body, and it all plays a factor. It's not just one thing, identifying one thing, working on that. It's connected to the next thing. It's connected to the next thing, right?
Yeah, and I think that is why the mouth could be connected to the, vagina. It's because we have this beautiful nervous system, which includes your brain, your spinal cord, the nerves running from your spinal cord to your tissues. And there's this constant messaging system to and from your brain to your tissues. And that's why sometimes there is the symptoms that present in your mouth, but it could be, issues downstairs, or, because there's this, big connection we have with actually the whole body being sort of connected via these crazy webs of nerves.
Exactly. Okay, my big question of the day. Are women supposed to be doing Kegels? And are we doing them right, or is there actually a proper technique?
Good question. Okay, Blaise, I think it depends. That's what I can say.
Okay.
I think I would definitely say that every individual is different. Everyone experiences issues in their body in a different way. Like I said earlier, you could have a potential prolapse, but it doesn't cause any symptoms. Does that mean that we need to be concerned about it? Maybe not, right? So it only really is an issue if it kind of starts affecting your day-to-day life, or if you really feel very uncomfortable, or just a slight, you don't have to feel very uncomfortable, but if you feel that that it feels like a different type of issue in your body, then I would say, yes, address it, let's change it up. And the same with the pelvic floor. If you have maybe the 4 Ps, one of the 4 Ps, multiple of the 4 Ps, so pee, poop, pain, pressure, I would say, and it really bothers you. I mean, sometimes if it doesn't bother you, I don't know, you don't have to do something about it. I would recommend that you do something about it, but you know what I mean. So if you do have any of those symptoms, I would recommend getting an assessment done by a pelvic health physiotherapist. Because, and the reason why I would recommend an assessment is because you might have to Kegel, but the next person might have to not Kegel. It's really, you could also have, okay, this is what can happen to the pelvic floor. You could have a weak pelvic floor, but you could also have a tight pelvic floor at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
If we give people Kegels that have a weak pelvic floor, but they're also tight, we might make them more tight. And it's actually the tightness that is causing the pee, pain, poop, and pressure, right? So cannot actually like give everyone this recipe. Oh yeah, you have these symptoms, you need to Kegel. Not necessarily.
Well, exactly. And like, that's all I've ever heard is like, are you doing your Kegels? You make sure you do your Kegels right after giving birth to tighten it up. But like, that's not necessarily the right antidote for that person. They should go get it checked to see what is the proper exercise I should be doing at this moment, right?
Exactly. And everyone gets assessed, and everyone potentially gets a different little treatment intervention. Right?
I love
Whatever
that.
fits that person. And we look at the whole story. Yes, you know, there is maybe weakness of your pelvic floor, but you're also sitting with pain. So does that mean we need to, you know, tighten a muscle that's already tight, you know, and maybe potentially cause more pain? So what I'm saying is we need to really look at everyone individually.
And so should people be seeing a pelvic floor therapist after giving birth?
Strongly recommend that, because the information, I would even recommend potentially before pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be before pregnancy or in pregnancy, because there is so much, Blaise, there's so much education that we or help or strategies or, you know, that we can actually share with our clients during pregnancy, before pregnancy, so that when you are pregnant or when you do have to deliver your baby, that you actually know so much more about that area and you're so much more comfortable. And hopefully you feel that, you know, it helps you during pregnancy and birth.
I love that. We need to have that more information download, like get educated about your health, especially if you're going to have a baby and then you have another baby. Like there could be underlying issues from the first pregnancy that you haven't dealt with, and then you have another baby that could just pile on the problems, hey?
Exactly, yeah, and that's why I would rather seek help earlier than later, I would say. So, and I, you know, I would recommend, you know, if you just want a checkup, why not? I mean, in that session, we could potentially help you to figure out, okay, maybe what are your goals? Okay, what are your concerns, if there are any? And we can work towards those goals and concerns and sort of address those concerns, right? So you don't even have to have big issues to seek pelvic health physio. You can even go with your small little issue, or as a prevention,
yes,
go and see a pelvic health physio.
Proactive. I love it.
Yes.
Let's discuss the connection between stress and women contracting the pelvic floor, and how do we notice that we're holding stress down there? You've talked about this a lot, and it was such a mind-blowing just epiphany for me of where I hold my stress.
Yes. Okay. So this is kind of, Blaise, this is going back to, you know, your thoughts and feelings that affect your bodily functions. There's a very strong connection between what's going on here up in our brains and then also what we feel in our body, or what is actually happening in our bodies and in our pelvic floors. So I would say like a lot of the time, sometimes not, but I find that often women that have tight pelvic floors could have, you know, there are other factors as well playing a role. It's not just that muscle decides to contract. No.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the times it's kind of what we call a top-down thing that happens. So in other words, your nervous system is a little bit sensitive, or you have, like, because you have a lot of stress in your life, because you are an anxious person, because you're not sleeping well. So lifestyle stuff also can actually affect your nervous system, right? And that can cause your pelvic floor to be like, we are going, or actually the body, to go into a little bit of a fight and flight mode.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that your body goes into a sort of a state where you're almost running away from a tiger most of the day. And women will tell me, yeah, I feel like I can never just relax my body, or I feel like I'm tense. I'm always tense, right? Or I sometimes find that people actually realize and sort of, actually discover that they are always contracting, and that it is really hard to relax that area. And then I think most often it could be something, like stress that can affect that pelvic floor.
And I think that's a great way to think about it, is like, where are we contracting? And I think we have to start being very mindful of asking ourselves that, because we get so busy doing and just making through the day, we're not really understanding where that stress is being held. Because I've noticed sometimes, like when I'm stressed, I'll hold my jaw tight. And I don't really realize it until I've done more of this work where I'm acknowledging, where am I tight right now? Why is it so tight right there? And I feel like I'm totally tense. Or I'm at the gas pump, pumping my gas, and I realize, like, wow, why is my, like, vagina clenched shut? Like, why am I holding it so hard in there? And it's just, like, I'm realizing, like, holy, it's not just because I want to, do a Kegel right there. It's just because that's where I'm holding it. And we're women and we're feelers. Yeah. And I think we have different areas in our body where we hold stress. But I think we're just educating women, like, maybe check in, like, where is your body tight right now? Yeah. Why is it tight, right?
Yeah. And Blaise, just to add to that, I think we just have to clarify also that a tight pelvic floor is not necessarily always a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I think a lot of women are like, well, what's wrong if I have a tight pelvic floor?
Isn't that what guys want?
Well, I think there's a difference between having a strong pelvic floor, which works very well, like it functions well. So it's able to contract very well in different ways. It's able to relax fully, because we need to be able to do both of those things just to actually be able to void and have a bowel movement, right? So the relaxation part is really, really very, very important. And so if we're always holding tension there, what will happen to that muscle? It kind of, not lose, but it kind of finds it difficult to relax.
Yes.
So if it finds it difficult to relax, it's probably also going to find it difficult to, like, respond, fast. It's kind of a little bit stuck.
Yeah. Oh, that's
it's
so
almost
interesting.
Like the actually holding tension in that pelvic floor, always contracting that pelvic floor, actually makes that muscle not function optimally. Still can function, but maybe optimal. And I mean, it doesn't mean that this counts for everyone. I think everyone is individual. Everyone has, some people that have tight pelvic floors don't have any issues with their pelvic floors. They don't have any symptoms, right? So, but then we get people that, have symptoms and are concerned, and it does bother it does impact their lives and their quality of lives. And it's those people we want to help. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautifully well put. Thank you so much for this education lesson. Like, I'm even learning more stuff here. So it's so
good.
Awesome to have this conversation with you. And, like, what are ways then to properly strengthen our pelvic floor, doing it the right way, tuning into ourselves? You're a Pilates instructor. How do you incorporate all those ways to really engage the pelvic floor?
Yeah, so like in my practice, I normally start with just like connecting to that pelvic floor area. So like it is important to know where the pelvic floor lies, like the anatomy of the pelvic floor. It's important to know that it has all these functions, and why does it need to be able to contract, and why does it need to relax, right? But really important that we need to be able to do both of those, contract and relax. So most often I start with just getting people to kind of let it go and feel that they can actually connect and feel that there's something down there that actually moves or doesn't move. What is actually happening down there? So that connection part, I normally do that with breath work. So I'll teach people how to breathe in a different way so that they actually feel something happening down there.
We've done that together in one of your sessions where you're like, you're really tight, loosen it up, breathe. And then what I do is that I just focus on that area and breathe into that. And I find that instantly releases something. And you're like, yeah, you did it. And I was like, okay, that's how I do it. Because so many of us don't even know how to release, right?
Exactly. And I think this is where, seeing someone that can really guide and help you in this process. I find that sometimes I have people that's been through sexual trauma that really have a hard time connecting to that area. So finding ways to help those people, because I think, this is where the tricky part comes in, we can't just give everyone this recipe. Everyone will respond differently to different cues even around how to connect and how to relax. Right?
And how do you incorporate, when I took a Pilates, I've taken different Pilates before, and not everybody has your background of the physiotherapy, of the pelvic floor. And I love how you integrate all of that knowledge and then teach people during your just Pilates class how to engage that pelvic floor and strengthen that area. And I find that we've been doing sit-ups all wrong.
Yeah, and I think, Blaise, I think sit-ups are really good for us to do. I think there's nothing wrong with doing sit-ups, but when you do a sit-up and you just don't feel good about it, you see your belly popping and you're experiencing some pressure in your vagina, and you're just not sure, you just don't feel good about doing a sit-up that way. Seeking maybe something like Pilates, which is just a different way of engaging. And in my Pilates practice, I do help women, specifically postpartum, to sort of get their pelvic floor to come along, not just doing ab work, core work, but really trying to get the whole core involved, because the pelvic floor is actually also part of the core. It's part of the canister. So when we think about the core, the pelvic floor is from below, the diaphragm is from above. We have transverse abdominis wrapping around like a corset from the back all around to the back again. And we have multifidus, nice fine little muscles right next to your spine. So Pilates is all about getting those guys to fire, getting them to activate, which might be a different experience for you because you've just done your crunches or your abdominal curl-ups or whatever, but you haven't done it that way. And maybe that is what you need.
Exactly, and that was a big lesson for me because I'm passionate and all in, and I want to feel the burn, and I want to feel that I'm working out. And you educated me that it's not always about I'm a past Zumba instructor, hardcore, but that's not necessarily engaging the core or engaging the right muscles because you don't know how to actually put it all together. And you taught me that with Pilates, that I wasn't moving off the mat, and yet I was doing really concentrated, conscious movements, engaging myself, that I got better workouts just laying on a mat than I did an hour of Zumba because I was realizing what core muscles to engage. And I find that you really educate women with that, and I love that.
Yeah. So Blaise, I think that you found that those exercises were actually more challenging than your fast-paced things that you were doing.
Yes, because I was never conscious. I was just doing and feeling that just a hard cardio workout would do the same, and it doesn't always.
Yes, and I think this is a good point that we have to make, is that we need to kind of bring this up with the listeners, is that maybe you're so good at doing one thing, but do we need to be able to do other things as well? And do we need to be able to activate the other muscle groups as well? Yes. We need to be able to do a variety of things, because that makes us more resilient as human beings. We can't just go fast-paced, cardio, hardcore. I want to feel the burn. We want to do that, but we also want to maybe look at, okay, what about my deep stabilizing muscles? What about my deep core muscles? What about my pelvic floor? I do have all of those muscles as well. Am I getting those guys to kind of come to the party, right?
Exactly. I love that you bring that all up, because I felt I was strong, but it wasn't strength in other areas, like the core strengthening muscles. I didn't have any because I never engaged those. I wasn't conscious of that. And you taught me how to pull it all together. And now even when I do cardio, I'm more aware how to engage, right? And when I do a slower paced exercise like Pilates, I'm able to engage all those muscles and strengthen all of that, not just one area, right?
Yeah, I think it targets different muscles, especially the slower, your slow twitch muscle fibers, which would be considered to be more stability muscles that are like closer to the joint. So when you have strength in those areas, those muscles have higher endurance, so they can be switched on for longer periods of the day, and so you're more supported. Compared to the fast twitch muscle fibers, which are more the go muscles. Those are the muscles that are there to help you when there's an explosive sort of activity, and we also need those. But we really need the other ones as well.
Oh, totally. And one quick tip before we wrap up here. You had mentioned to me once, and I know many women love to run, and we have a lot of marathons and running, and we train. But like you had mentioned to me, like when you're running, and if you're not properly engaging that pelvic floor, you can actually do some damage. So what are some tips when women are runners of how to engage or what not to do? Or you had mentioned maybe around the time of the month, you have to be more careful, correct?
Thanks for the question, Blaise. Really look at the individual in front of us and be very sort of curious as to what is going on in that person's body. Like when your goal is to run, we want to make sure that your pelvic floor is strong to be able to control pressure and impact. Right? Yes. We want to make sure that your body mechanics when you're running is good to actually disperse some of that impact through your body so that you don't have crazy amount of sort of pressure into your pelvic floor. So there's a lot of things, right? And then it also depends on strength of your glutes, strength of the core. So like those are the things that we can work on, that we can actually address to be able for you to run. Yeah. So I think just to answer that, I think that looking at each individual and being able to say, you know what, in your body, this is what's happening. I think you should do this.
Oh, that's a great advice. I really appreciate it. This is such a great conversation to have. And let's just recap what we talked about today. We learned about the functions of the pelvic floor and why it's important for women to really get familiar with their individual bodies for overall health and optimal health, how to identify if there is an imbalance or an issue by looking at the 4 Ps, how to do proper Kegels and get treatment or seek advice on what is appropriate for your individual body, and also to understand the correlation of stress and how that plays on our pelvic floor health and what we can do to really release, how to use breath to release the stress down there and really help women's health down there. Thank you, Lisa, for coming on the show. Please tell us, where are you offering your services? How can people get in touch with you? And just if you have anything going on.
Thanks, Blaise. It's been really great to be on the show today. Yes, so currently I am working in Edmonton. I work at a wonderful multidisciplinary clinic called Pine Integrated Health. So if you are not already following us on Instagram or Facebook, I really encourage you to do that. We also, I do offer my Pilates classes free at the moment, which normally I would kind of have a little clinical group with me, doing it from Pine. But at the moment with COVID and everything, I'm just offering it for free. So join Pine Integrated Health Community for Moms. If you are a mom or on the journey to parenthood, you can join the group and you can do my little Pilates class. It's on a Thursday at 11 a.m. So it's just a little sampler. So if you just want to kind of experience Pilates or something different in your body, please come and join me on a Thursday at 11 a.m. But in general, Pine Integrated Health, what a great clinic. We specialize in pregnancy and postpartum. I treat men as well. I think I'm the only physio that treat men in this clinic, but we also offer physiotherapy for men. That's a different story, Blaise. A different day. But for where I'm working right now, in our team we have counselors, we have lactation consultants, we have pelvic floor physiotherapists, we have, I think we have massage and acupuncturists as well here. So it's really, what a wonderful environment. And we really help women, from, not looking only at your pelvic floor, but really looking at in general, your general health, your mental health, and how that, that is really important to address as well, not only going to physiotherapy, so just an example there. But so if you want to get hold of me, I will definitely get people to just send me an email if that's something they want to do, if they have any specific questions. Can I provide my email address, Blaise?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, yeah. So it's Lisa de Villiers at pinehealth.ca.
Wonderful. I'll put the links up too when I post this podcast so they can be able to contact you.
Great. Yeah, and very good, actually good news right now is I do offer video treatments or video assessments. So, and I find that we've been able to reach more people beyond the city of Edmonton just because we offer telehealth, right? So that's an option as well. If you're wanting to seek help, just doing a video call, which is, I find I've been doing it for the last 2 months. It has been really effective. We don't always have to, go to the pelvic floor and palpate the pelvic floor to get information. We can look at your story. We can evaluate other aspects of your body to give us information so that we know, what to give you, what treatments to give you, what exercises to give you. So that's also just an option, and in a very effective way to sort of seek help is just through telehealth right now.
Oh, thank you so much. This was such a jam-packed session of great information. Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge and just educating us on women's bodies and our overall health. And it's been a pleasure, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Blaise, and thank you so much for having me today.
Awesome. That's it for this week's episode. Challenge yourself to be vulnerable, lean into these difficulties, and have these open conversations so we can rise up as our heroes of our lives and let us breathe fire together. If you've enjoyed this show, please subscribe and support Blaise the Trail podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Blaise Hunter.
You've been listening to Blaise the Trail with Blaise Hunter. To learn more about how you can breathe fire and unleash the hero within, or to listen to past episodes, visit blaisehunter.com.